Well, that certainly wasn't the most fun game to be at, certainly as a Kraken fan. And while it would have definitely been nice to see the boys put up a little bit more of a fight against the Maple Leafs, I still was watching the NHL live in person in Seattle with my wife, which makes this easily the best Valentine's Day I've ever had, so it wasn't all bad. With the season going the way that it has for the Kraken, especially compared to Vegas's first season, I've seen and heard a lot of people not afraid to share their opinion of how they felt Seattle did in the expansion draft. Heck, I made an entire video about it, which seems like a lot of people misunderstood, but regardless of what you think of the Kraken and how they did in the expansion draft, there are some teams that they were never going to be better than in this first season, and the Maple Leafs are certainly one of those teams. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken Recap and Reaction, or as we call it, Kraken R&R, where, unfortunately, after tonight, Seattle fans probably could use some R&R as the Kraken falls 6-2 to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And yeah, sometimes you're just going to lose to a better team, which again, regardless of how the Kraken built this team coming into this first season, even with them at their best, Toronto was always going to be a better team. And sure, the Kraken have beaten some very good teams this season, and teams that are downright better than them. Heck, they've already beaten the Wild, the Capitals, the Hurricanes, the Penguins, and the Panthers twice, all of which are very good teams, and teams near the top of the league as things stand right now. Plus, they were also coming off of beating the Ducks, who surprisingly are also near the top of their division. All of those wins, though, came with the Kraken playing at or at least near their best, which tonight was most certainly not the case. In fact, I would argue that the Kraken played one of their worst games of the season tonight, looking a lot more like that disorganized team that we saw at the start of the season that couldn't get out of their own way, playing sloppy at both ends of the ice, couldn't get much as far as goaltending was concerned, at least in the first period from Grubauer, and on top of that, couldn't get anything to happen for them on special teams, whether that was the PK or the power play. Speaking of which, oh man, was I ready to go in on the special teams after this game, and I probably would have right out of the gate if it wasn't for that second goal that the Kraken ended up scoring. As even though the Leafs did play better 5-on-5 and probably still would have ended up winning a close-ish game, the reason that this game turns into a blowout rather than maybe a close Leafs win that's at least a fun game to watch for Kraken fans is the special teams, which definitely turned this one ugly. To be honest, depending on how the rest of this recording goes, yeah, there might still be some frustration that boils over regarding how both of these special team units have been playing over this last month. But for now, let's just get into the game and we'll see where the night takes us. Early on, it's pretty much all Leafs, though Seattle is doing a good job of keeping the Toronto attack mostly to the outside. And eventually, they are able to get a good look of their own as Donato gets a chance from the slot, but can't handle the pass cleanly and doesn't end up getting a shot off. And then right back the other way, it's Tavares who gets a pass up to Kerfoot, who gets a clean look off of it, and his shot goes into the back of the net to give the Leafs the 1-0 lead early, just 4 minutes into the game. Kerfoot, who the Kraken could have had in the expansion draft, though, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a Kraken fan that isn't happy with their selection of McCann over Kerfoot, does pretty much just beat Grubauer cleanly blocker side. And for Grubauer, I think he probably gave Kerfoot a little bit too much of the short side of the net to aim at, especially considering there was a fair amount of screen that would have been hard for Kerfoot to shoot past on the other side of the net. The Kraken, as frustratingly has been the case all too often so far this season, do seem woken up into the game after this early goal by the opposing team, pressing back right away and nearly getting a quick response goal after turnover leads to a couple of quick passes and a very good chance for Fleury, but an even better save is made by Campbell to keep the Leafs in the lead by 1. Seattle is able to keep the pressure on over the next few minutes, largely keeping the puck in the offensive zone and getting a number of good looks at the Toronto net. But thanks to surprisingly good defense by the Leafs, who are able to keep it mostly to the outside, not enough of those good looks actually lead to shots on goal, and eventually Toronto is able to survive the Kraken onslaught. But a sloppy breakout and potentially a puck bouncing off of a ref along the near boards, which if it did, that would be the second time now that that's happened in the last 2 games for the Kraken, but it leaves a completely loose puck just out in the middle of the open in the Toronto end of the ice, which Appleton is the first one to get to. He puts it out for Yarncroke, who buries the shot into the back of the net to tie this game up, and the Kraken make it 1-1. 2 minutes later, though, the Kraken have a sloppy breakout of their own on top of a poorly timed line change, which leaves Jeremy Lauzon stuck in a 2-on-1 puck battle along the boards in the defensive zone in the corner, up against Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. And regardless of what any Kraken fans think of Jeremy Lauzon and how he's played for them so far this season, this is a pretty big mismatch not in his favor. Not only is it 2 Leaf players against just 1 Kraken player, but purely by contract, this is a difference of about $21 million. So it probably shouldn't come as any surprise that eventually Austin Matthews does end up winning that puck battle, and he gets it out to a wide open Michael Bunting, who puts it past Grubauer and into the back of the net to give the Leafs back the lead. It's now 2-1. And with Bunting scoring the goal, it's yet another player that the Kraken could have had in the expansion draft, this time from the Arizona Coyotes. And if you could have told the future back in July, this is a selection that I think Seattle would have wanted to make. And this is where the special teams issues start to come in. And it all starts just a couple minutes after Bunting gives Toronto that 2-1 lead, as the Leafs will get the first power play of the game off an Alexiak trip. And although a struggling Kraken penalty kill unit does a pretty good job early on of killing off one of the better power plays that the league has to offer, even getting a shorthanded rush of their own the other way, eventually a centering pass tic-tac-toes off of Bunting, then Kasha, and into the back of the net to give Toronto the 3-1 lead with the power play goal. The Kraken do press late, getting a couple of shots off, but can't get anything to go, so eventually we do get to the end of the first, with the Leafs maintaining that 3-1 lead. And sure, 3-1 is certainly not the score you'd want to see if you're a Kraken fan, but this is a 3-1 Toronto Maple Leafs lead. So honestly, Seattle's in a pretty good spot here, as the Leafs, if they're known for anything other than losing in the first round of the playoffs, it's blowing 3-1 leads. If the Kraken were going to come back in this one, though, they weren't going to do it with Grubauer and net, as coming out in the second period, the decision has been made to go with Drieger the rest of the way. And to be honest, this almost seems like a sign that we might see more of Drieger in this back half of the season, as the Kraken look to figure out where this goaltending situation is at going into next year. But we'll just kind of have to see how the rest of the season plays out. It certainly was not a good look for Grubauer, who was outperformed in the last 2 games between him and Drieger. Back to the How Not to Play Special Teams show by the Seattle Kraken, though. Up next, it's a Kraken power play 6 minutes into the second period. That never goes anywhere and doesn't get a shot off on goal. And then, right after it's killed off, another tripping call against the Kraken means the Leafs are onto their second power play of the game. And I kid you not, even before this Leafs power play started, this is what I typed into the notes on my phone. Leafs power play immediately follows, as we know. Unlike Leafs penalty kill, which gave the Kraken no space to get set up on their power play, the Kraken penalty kill is happy to just sit in the slot and not press outward to challenge Leafs power play, giving them all the open shots they could want. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens, and after one big Drieger save, this Leafs power play comes up as well with the goal. It's Mitch Marner who puts it in, and the Leafs are now 2 for 2 on the power play and have a 4-1 lead. I guess the silver lining for the Kraken with this Leafs goal is that, unlike a couple of the previous Leafs goal scorers, Mitch Marner, in spite of what a lot of hot take Leafs fans may have wanted at the time, he was very, very not available in the expansion draft, so the Kraken could never have taken him. Plus, I guess there's also the fact that the only leads that Leafs are more known for blowing than 3-1 leads are 4-1 leads, so this is still a very, very winnable game for the Kraken, or maybe more accurately, a very losable game for the Leafs. And really, for the remainder of the second period, which was still about half of it, the Kraken did start to look like they were taking control of the game, getting a few different pushes off on the Toronto end of the ice, and even getting a power play that, well, for a second time it was killed off, got a couple of shots off on net, including one early on by McCann, so just seconds into that second power play, it was already a better one than their first one. Still though, we do get to the second intermission with the Leafs maintaining that 4-1 lead, and while the Kraken may still have a chance with the score 4-1 going into the third, it's not a particularly high one, even against the Leafs, and it has to be said that that gap in special teams is pretty apparent considering the Leafs are now 2 for 2 on their power play, while the Kraken are 0 for 2. And it's only going to get worse as far as special teams are concerned from here on out. And I say that because early on in the third, the Kraken are going to get another power play after a big save from Campbell, though behind him, Muzzin was tackling Geeky into the net, so yeah, that's going to lead to a Kraken power play, which might seem like a good thing, but it ends up being a good thing for the Leafs, as even though McCann does get another early power play shot on goal, a defensive breakdown on the power play leads to a Mitch Marner breakaway, and as he gets close to the Kraken net, he makes Drieger think he's trying to wrap it around him, but just leaves it right out in front of the net, and with Drieger pulled, Kampf is able to tap it into the open net to give the Leafs the 5-1 lead and the shorthanded goal. So now the Leafs are 2-2 on their power play and 1-for-3 on the Kraken power play. So once again, in summary, to this point in the game, we have 5 power plays, 2 for the Leafs, 3 for the Kraken, and 3 Leaf goals. Fantastic. Plus, to be perfectly honest, with that third Kraken power play, after they give up the shorthanded goal, they were lucky to not give up another one, as the Leafs got the best chance following the shorthanded goal. Now, if you're new to these, or maybe just the Kraken season in general, you might be thinking, sure, this is a miserable night for Seattle special teams, but it is just one game, and it is against the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are a very good team, especially offensively, so these things happen, right? Well, at this point to this point in the game, the Kraken over the last month were 2-for-39 on the power play, with those 2 goals both coming with 2-man advantages, one a 3-on-5 opportunity and the other a 6-on-4 at the end of a game. Meanwhile, they'd given up 2 shorthanded goals at 5-on-4. So in those last 39 power plays, they are being outscored 2-0, 5-on-4. Yeah, it's not just one game. Meanwhile, at least over the last couple weeks, the penalty kill has not been much better, and certainly has not been making it very difficult on any team, regardless of how good their power play unit is, to get shots off on goal, just kind of hoping that the goaltending comes up big or that they can block shots before they get to the net. So, all that to say, again, basically over this last month, the Kraken would have been better off had they been given the opportunity to just decline all their penalties. However, unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, that's not something you can do in the NHL, and for the Kraken, they don't seem to have learned their lesson, as just a couple minutes after this potential worst power play of the season, they draw another penalty to go back to the power play. Although, for the first time in obviously a very long time, it may have actually been a good thing that the Kraken get a power play and some time 5-on-4, as for the third time in this game now, McCann gets an early shot off on goal on the power play, and it gets past Campbell. The crowd behind the net absolutely erupts in cheers, and the Kraken seem like they think the puck went in, but it does get scooped out of the net, and the refs are waving it off saying no goal. So play goes back, the Kraken keep it in the offensive zone, take a couple more shots, and then as the puck is cleared out of the zone, the horn goes in the arena. The crowd cheers again, though it's kind of a, should we be happy? Yay, I guess the horn's happening. It goes to review. It's a pretty short review. And sure enough, before the puck could get scooped out by Toronto, it had fully crossed the line. So the Kraken get the early power play goal. And for McCann, it's his 20th on the season. A career high for him, and the first power play goal 5-on-4 in a very long time. First one now in 40 power plays. Unfortunately, as far as the grand scheme of the game is concerned, as this does just make it 5-2 now, it still would take one heck of a comeback for the Kraken to even get this thing tied up, especially as they continue to play pretty sloppy hockey over the next few minutes, not really pressing until later on in the game. They do nearly score a couple more times, including one very good opportunity that the Kraken get as Toronto turns it over in their end off of Mitch Marner's rear end, but they can't get anything more past Campbell, and eventually it's Muzzin from the blue line who slaps one past Drieger near the end of the game to get us to that final score of 6-2. So in the end, again, ultimately, at least to me, this is a game that the Kraken lost with horrendous special teams play, pretty much throughout the entire game, even with that late power play goal from McCann that barely sneaks all the way across the line to get the goal to count. Now, that isn't to say that I think the Kraken should have or even would have won if this game had been 5-on-5 all the way through, as they did have significant chunks of this game where they played sloppily even 5-on-5, and the Leafs probably would have been able to capitalize on enough of those to win this game, not to mention the goaltending issues early on from Grubauer. But I think it still would have been a much closer game and at least an entertaining one going through the last part of the third period, or even at the start of the third period. Regardless of the fact that the Kraken did tie the Leafs with 25 shots on goal, we're never going to know what they could have done with more 5-on-5 time, as they let this game get away from them with that terrible special teams play, giving up the 2 power play goals, and then of course the shorthanded one. In the end though, you know what? At this point the Kraken are all but mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, so every loss can only improve their chances of getting a better pick in the draft lottery at the end of the season, which can only help the future of the Kraken. And while sure, it is frustrating that the season has gone the way it is, and we would have liked to see more wins for our team in this first year, it's just nice to finally see NHL in Seattle, and for this first season, that's really what it's all about, at least to me anyway. But even if you are one of the people who's just downright mad at the Kraken for how poorly the season has gone, you're still more than welcome to vent down in the comments section. And for everyone else, feel free to let me know what you thought of this game or the video or anything else Kraken related down in the comments. And until next time, if you've made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them, especially if you're new here. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and go Kraken.